Today we have a very special video in that we are going to be ranking the top 15 themed lift hills and coasters. Now I actually got inspiration for this list when I was on the Matterhorn and I saw how well of a themed lift hill it was, and I thought, why not make a ranking of themed lift hills and see how multiple of them place. There are a lot of great themed lift hills everywhere in the world, but a lot of these on the list were Disney and Universal, so let me know down in the comments if there are any overseas. We are going to be having daily uploads this week, and you won't want to miss it, so make sure you like and subscribe. And with that being said, let's get right into the ranking. Before we get started though, I would like to clarify that there can be multiple lift hills from the same ride on this lift if they are very different from each other. I'd also like to say that some of these lift hills are bordering between a vertical launch and just a lift hill, but I kind of just mixed them in together just because it's more fun for the ranking. But with that being said, coming in at number 15, we have Space Mountain with that very first lift hill. Now we're going to be talking about that Space Mountain from Disneyland, California. But I do think this lift hill is just a very cool one. It's one of those lift hills that sets the tone for the ride and the type of sci-fi theme that it has. With the whole room turning red around you, it's just a very cool start, and it definitely sets the tone for the ride right away. But it is nothing special, it is kind of short, so that's why it ranks down at 15. And coming in at number 14, we're staying at Disneyland, California for Big Thunder Mountain with that very last lift hill. Now, funny enough, I used to go on this ride just to see this very last lift hill, to see that construction for Galaxy's Edge. But it definitely plays into that western theme of Big Thunder very well. If you look to the left, you can see that iconic mountain, and as you're going up the lift hill, you see a ton of different animatronic animals. And it's just a very scenic lift hill, very well themed. And I thought it definitely deserved a spot on this list. But coming in at number 13, we have the Incredicoaster. Now, obviously, I'm going to be talking about that giant 122-foot lift hill. And while the theming doesn't start to the very end of the lift hill, at the very beginning, you look to your left and you can see the entirety of DCA, which is super cool. And then obviously at the end, there's a little bit of theming. You have Elastigirl as a static figure that goes above you. And then there's also that Mr. Incredible animatronic that's holding that cookie. And honestly, this lift hill just made the list because of that cookie smell. It smells amazing every time you're on the ride, and that scent definitely just adds an extra touch. You also have that Incredibles music playing. It's just a very well done lift hill. But coming in at number 12, we have 7 Dwarfs Mine Train over at Magic Kingdom. Now I'm going to be doing that very last final lift hill, and I like the scene of this being indoors with that cave area. There's also very well colored gems on the right and left, and what sets this lift hill apart from the rest is the great atmosphere that it has. With that famous Hi-Ho song, you have most of the people in your vehicle clapping along and even singing sometimes, and every time I ride this ride, it has such good vibes. And I think it's just a very well done lift hill with a lot of theming. And coming in at number 11, we have Crush's Coaster. Now this lift hill is very unique, and if you've ridden this ride, you know the thing that sets this lift hill apart is that animatronic shark. You get very close to that shark and it's very cool to see. And I think that whole lift hill is just very well done. It keeps you very engaged until you get to that main coaster section. But besides that animatronic, there's not a whole lot of theming, which is why I couldn't rank it much higher on this list. But kicking off the top 10, we have Cosmic Rewind over at Epcot. Now I think a lot of people forget that this is even a lift hill, but it's that very first one. Right when you come out of the load station and you turn that corner, you kind of see it from afar, and then you turn right again, and then it's that lift hill. Kind of a lot of exposition for the ride, but it's very cool, very well themed. You have multiple members of the Guardians of the Galaxy talking to you, and mostly the scene just builds a lot of anticipation and excitement. It's also just a very smooth lift hill, and even though it's a very short lift hill, it's still really well themed and really cohesive with the rest of the theming of the ride. Now coming in at number 9, we have a very underrated lift hill in my opinion, and that is Expedition Everest, that very first lift hill. It's such an iconic lift hill. You can see it from afar in the park, and over at different parks, you probably can see it too. This lift hill stands out from the rest for me because it has such a great presence. What I mean is that there's nothing on the left or right of you, it's just you and that lift hill going straight up, and it's honestly a little scary if you're afraid of heights. And if you look to your side, you can even see other Disney World parks, which just shows how high up you really are. And you even go through a tiny little mountain with that Yeti painting. It's just very well themed, it sets up the story so well, it's super subtle, and honestly just a very underrated lift hill. But coming in at number 8, we're actually going to our first non-Disney and non-Universal park, which is Euromir over at Europa Park. Now this is a very iconic lift hill in Europe. It's one of the slowest lift hills and the longest lift hills because you're spiraling up in that circle for a very long time. And it's not that traditional chain lift hill, it's very unique, very cool. It has kind of that space station structure theming, which is very cool. I like that space theming. But what makes that lift hill so good is that EDM music. It's got that super catchy techno soundtrack, and it can kind of get stuck in your head after the ride for sure. But this ride is closing very soon, I think next year, so make sure you get your last rides on on this. But coming in at number 7, we have the Mummy Ride in Orlando, Florida. Now this might be a controversial one because it borders a lift hill and a vertical launch like I said earlier in the video, but at the very beginning it kind of coasts up a little bit, sort of like a lift hill, so I was just going to count it for the ranking just because it's a very well themed type of lift hill. You have the villain of the ride, Imhotep, and he's kind of talking to you as you launch up, but what makes this very cool is that you shoot through the middle of that projected screen, and it also kind of builds anticipation as you slowly kind of coast up and then you launch. Like I said, I know this borders not being a lift hill if at all, but just for the ranking I'm going to include it in this video. And coming in at number 6, we have Space Mountain over in Orlando, Florida. Now honestly, one of my personal favorite lift hills just because of the Space Mountain theming. It has that perfect Tomorrowland classic feel. It's actually a dual lift hill. There's one on the left, one on the right, and you surround the People Mover track, which is very cool. There's that giant spaceship in the middle with those 2 static astronauts. And on each side, there are 2 space commanders that are working at the space station for your launch sequence. You also hear that Space Mountain music for the first time, even though it's off-ride audio. And this is one of those lift hills where if you ride it every time, you can find a new hidden detail. It's just super well done. And also just a very long lift hill. But starting off the top 5, we have 5 lift hills that all could be the number 1 spot. They're all very good, but honestly, it just comes down to preference. And Thunder Mountain cavern scene, that very first lift hill. This easily has one of the coolest environments out of any lift hill on this list. And I'm going to be talking about the Disneyland version for this, but when you look to the left, you have that huge cave that has a lot of depth, and then it has that multicolored lighting everywhere. It just looks super well done. And when it's working, you have that waterfall that goes on both sides of the coaster, which is very cool. And I know some people might even have this as their number 1 ranked theme lift hill, which is fine, but I think the other ones just do a little bit better of a job in my opinion. And coming in at number 4, we have the Incredible Hulk coaster over at Islands of Adventure. This is also the one that borders between a lift hill and a vertical launch, kind of like the Mummy Ride. But I think this one definitely has more of a lift hill element than the Mummy did, because you kind of coast up for a little bit until you randomly launch towards the very end. But if you do this lift hill at night, it is absolutely amazing how visually pleasing it looks. It has that glowing green color scheme everywhere, and it has that Hulk audio, and the soundtrack is sort of building up right into that launch. And this is one of those lift hills that's more of a scary lift hill just because it's building so much anticipation. And like I said, just a very well themed coaster, especially for a thrill coaster. And coming in at number 3, we have Space Mountain over at Disneyland, California. Now we're going to be talking about that second lift hill. It starts off very normal, you're kind of coasting up, and you can see that galaxy projection off in the distance. Then suddenly that red spiral projection kind of circles around you. And honestly, it's a very disorienting effect, but very effective for what the ride theme is trying to accomplish. And once again, this ride just has an incredible soundtrack, and when you combine that sci-fi soundtrack, that themed tunnel, and just that slow coasting of the lift hill, it makes for just a very immersive scene. I definitely thought about putting this at number 1 on this list, but I thought these other lift hills were just a bit better, and I prefer them just a little bit more. And coming in at number 2, we have Big Thunder Mountain again over at Disneyland, California. We're going to be going for that very last lift hill, which is the dynamite scene. And visually, this is the best lift hill on this entire list. When you first enter that indoor part, there are TNT barrels all around you with wires connecting to them. And then you see the fuse that lights them all up running along the walls. And then it slowly builds up, and then you can hear the barrels exploding with the audio all around you. It's super loud before a giant mist effect comes out, acting like the TNT barrels have blown up. It's super cool. And just with the sights and the sounds, it's just a very perfect lift hill. And what I like about this is it's a sequence of events as you're coasting along and as the vehicle kind of goes up the hill. Chain reaction kind of starts happening as the TNT barrels are starting to explode as you're moving up, and then that mist effect happens right when the top of the vehicle reaches. It's just a very well done scene. But not the best lift hill on this list in my opinion. And I know this might be a controversial one, but for number 1 we have the Matterhorn at Disneyland, California. This is the theme lift hill that inspired this list, and I thought it just definitely deserved the number 1 spot. And right when the ride starts and you turn that corner, it just becomes pitch black. It's also a dual lift hill with another vehicle on both sides, but this easily has the best atmosphere out of any lift hill on this list. But for me, it's about the theming of the lift hill and how it plays into the theme of the overall ride. It is super scary not being able to see anybody right in front of you in your vehicle, and it is the loudest one on the list, easily the most menacing with that Yeti yelling as you go up. You can hear his footsteps all around you, it is so loud, and then when you finally get to the top, he yells. And when you reach about the middle of the lift hill, there's a little projection on the left. It looks like you can see him through the ice. It's super well done. And like I said, it's just the atmosphere of this scene. And videos do not do this lift hill justice. If you're on the ride, it's just the coolest and scariest environment, even for a Disney ride. And if you haven't, go out there, ride this ride, go on this lift hill, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's just super menacing. But that is going to do it for our list today. Let me know how you'd rank these in the comments, or if I missed any lift hills in the world. I know there are a lot of coasters with some crazy lift hills, but obviously in this video we're specifically talking about theming. Make sure you like and subscribe, as there is new content coming out daily. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.